This video is sponsored by Conflict of Nations, the free online strategy game happening in a modern global warfare. Set in the early 21st century, Conflict of Nations puts you in control of a real country and its army. In the quest for world domination, you're in charge of everything: the economic and technological development of your nation, the alliances and coalitions with other players, and most importantly, your military tactics. One of my favorite parts of Conflict of Nations is just how deep that strategy can get when you're taking on up to 128 players at once, moving units around the map in real time with objectives that can take hours to finish, and game rounds that can take weeks to complete, giving you tons of time to strategize and plan. And you can play with the same account on both PC and mobile, so you never lose sight of your war. Infographics Show viewers get a special gift of 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription for free when they use the link. But it's only available for 30 days, so click the link, choose a country, and start fighting your way to victory right now. The United States and Russia are two global powers with a complicated history. Given the immense size of the two nations, as well as their power and influence over the rest of the world, they maintain one of the most critical and strategic foreign relationships of any two countries on the entire planet. But how do their armies stack up against each other? Specifically, why don't we take what are widely considered to be their top-tier troops from both countries and examine the key differences in their training, tactics, weaponry, and specialties? For the United States, while some might argue the case for the U.S. Army Rangers or the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment, better known as Delta Force, it's perhaps more widely agreed that the best that America has to offer in terms of specialized fighters comes in the form of the United States' Navy SEALs. And in the other corner, Russia's most elite branch of its military would have to be none other than the infamous Spetsnaz. Now, it's important to note straight out of the gate, Spetsnaz as a term refers to a lot of different units within the Russian military. The word itself refers to units that are assembled by any special operations group of the Russian military to complete specific missions, whether that be their Navy, Army, Airborne Troop, or even the FSB, formerly known as the KGB. This means there is almost no such thing as a singular Spetsnaz unit. Furthermore, a Spetsnaz unit, assembled for a particular mission, might not consist entirely of active combatants. Some might have computer specialists or even rocket scientists working alongside or consulting directly with special operations troops. Members of both the SEALs and Spetsnaz groups are notoriously secretive, since their existence and operations are considered matters of national security to the United States and the Russian Federation, respectively. It's largely due to leaks or carefully curated information intentionally released from within these governments that the public has had any knowledge of these two special forces units. Navy SEALs and Spetsnaz are famous, or infamous, depending on your perspective, for conducting high-profile missions, with SEAL Team 6 gaining widespread notoriety and media attention after their involvement in the assassination of Al-Qaeda leader and 9/11 terrorist attack architect Osama bin Laden. Comparatively, the primary difference between certain United States Special Forces groups like Delta Force or the Navy SEALs and Russia's Spetsnaz is that those examples are permanent military units that exist even when not on active duty. Spetsnaz are formed as and when they are needed. So for the purposes of this video, we'll be comparing the Navy SEALs to various different Russian specialized military units that could all qualify as Spetsnaz, such as Alpha Group, Spetsnaz GRU, and Russia's Special Operations Force. So let's begin where anyone hoping to join either the Navy SEALs or a Russian Spetsnaz group would start out: training. In order to join the SEALs, there is the prerequisite that the potential recruit has to already be a part of the United States Navy. This means that they'll have already had to have completed their basic training to join the Navy. From there, entering into training to become a Navy SEAL is entirely voluntary, although it comes with a few other caveats. Volunteers must be between the ages of 18 and 29 years old. They must also be a United States citizen with a high school education or equivalent, with a score of at least 220 on their Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, a multiple-choice test that determines whether someone is suitable for enlisting in the U.S. Armed Forces. SEAL candidates also need to be proficient in all aspects of the English language, with at least 20/70 vision, no history of drug usage, and they need to pass a physical screening test too, as well as having no prior criminal convictions. And that's just the requirements to become considered. Even ticking all those boxes doesn't guarantee someone will become a Navy SEAL. What are the requirements to enter training to join a Spetsnaz unit? Well, surprisingly, it can be hard to come across accurate information on that. For a while, the exact nature of Spetsnaz training was kept a closely guarded secret, even within Russia itself, The exact regime for new recruits was known only to those directly involved with the special operations, such as the GRU. No, not that guy from Despicable Me who stole the moon. These are the main intelligence directorate, the Russian Federation's foreign military intelligence agency, serving under the general staff of their armed forces. The GRU acronym was used in official capacity during the time of the Soviet Union. However, the modern iteration of the main intelligence directorate is still commonly colloquially known as the GRU. They're responsible for military intelligence operations and maintaining their own special forces units. So until the 1980s, the Soviet GRU would have been the only ones to know of the abilities required to join one of their Spetsnaz units. This secrecy led to a lot of unsubstantiated rumors about Spetsnaz groups until Mikhail Gorbachev, the president of the Soviet Union from 1990 to its dissolution in 1991, who'd also been effectively directing the country as leader of the Communist Party for 5 years before that, disclosed Russian state secrets in an act of good faith to ease international tensions with the US. After the policy of glasnost, meaning openness, stories of the achievements and abilities of Spetsnaz groups reached the Western world. According to books written by many former agents of agencies such as the GRU or KGB, the training of Spetsnaz recruits was designed to foster similar skills to those of Delta Force or the British Special Air Service. Anyone applying to join a Spetsnaz group didn't need any prior military training and didn't have a long checklist of requirements to start training, like the Navy SEALs. However, to train to join a Spetsnaz group, candidates did need to have completed at least the normal basic training before attempting to meet the harsh requirements of the Spetsnaz training regime. To become a fully fledged SEAL, volunteer recruits are expected to pass 2 months' worth of initial training to prepare them, including a series of intense and demanding physical and mental screening tests. They will also have to undergo a rigorous basic underwater demolition/SEAL or BUDS training program that can last 6 months. It's said to be one of, if not the toughest of the programs within the US military, enduring a constant barrage of mental and physical conditioning. Prospective SEALs are taught several specialized skills necessary for the type of operations they'll be undertaking should they successfully complete their training. These skills include basic water competency in swimming, underwater combat, weapons and demolitions training, and navigational skills on dry land. The BUDS program also includes the infamous Hell Week, a 5-day stretch wherein each candidate for the Navy SEALs is subjected to extreme physical exertion at an almost constant rate. Around the clock, recruits are in an almost constant motion, only permitted around 4 hours of sleep in the entire week. That's not 4 hours per night, it's 4 or 5 hours over 5 whole days, while the rest of the time they are either running, swimming, paddling, carrying boats on their heads, doing sit-ups, push-ups, rolling in the sand, trudging through mud, or paddling aboard boats. If that sounds like a lot to go through, it is, proven by the fact that only a quarter of every class of Navy SEAL candidates will successfully complete their BUDS training. Even then, it's still not over. Recruits for the SEALs are then further trained in tactics focused on working as a part of a small unit, parachuting, and operating in icy weather conditions. Making it through all that earns the recruit their trident, the official symbol of the US Navy SEALs. After that point, they're assigned to a team of 16 fellow SEALs, wherein they will undergo several more months of advanced training. And training to join a Spetsnaz group is hardly a picnic either. Russian Special Forces training is as infamously brutal as that of the SEALs, if not more so. With these Spetsnaz training regimes, it's all about escalation. The pressure placed on each potential Spetsnaz candidate is set to exponentially increase, and as it does, so does the pain involved. Each soldier undergoing this regime is pushed to their maximum threshold, not just for physical pain, but mental and emotional anguish as well. Once they reach the absolute limit of their tolerance for all of these, the goal of the training is to push them even further beyond that limit. The exact activities employed in the training can vary slightly, depending on which branch of the Russian military or which of the intelligence agencies is training recruits for potential deployment into a future Spetsnaz group. Remember, Spetsnaz are formed as they are needed, so completing training activities doesn't mean a candidate just slots into the roster of an existing unit. Some examples of known parts of the training regime are assault courses. If you've ever gone to an outdoorsy summer camp, not necessarily even a military-adjacent camp, then you might have even tried one for yourself. They can be challenging, but not impossible to complete, right? Now try to imagine doing an assault course while being shot at with real bullets, not blanks, not BBs or paint. Spetsnaz candidates are put through live-fire assault courses as part of their training. To be fair, the U.S. Special Operation potentials often face similar challenges. Other physically demanding activities they're put through include martial arts instruction with the use of real blades. This has often led to many recruits suffering permanent injuries from just their training alone, ranging from minor non-fatal stab wounds to full-on flesh wounds. Now, skills in hand-to-hand combat aren't much use when your opponent is wielding a firearm, a knife, or even just has a blunt object like a simple rock within reach. But the idea behind Spetsnaz candidates training in hand-to-hand isn't so much for them to implement these skills in battle. It's done more so to instill a sense of physical and mental discipline so that when an enemy opens fire, these future Spetsnaz operatives can ignore the flight part of their natural fight-or-flight response and head toward danger instead of running away from it. Much like their Navy SEAL counterparts, beyond general combat training, these Spetsnaz hopefuls are also taught specific skills to the types of missions they engage in. This means learning infiltration methods for covert operations where they might be required to go undercover, such as sabotage, assassinations, and reconnaissance missions. This includes learning foreign languages and receiving training in cultural acceptance to allow these candidates to better blend in with the public of whatever country they're conducting their operations in. They're also taught how to bypass locks and utilize silent kill techniques, as well as parachuting and survival training for long durations in harsh environments. One of the core differences between the Navy SEALs and the various Spetsnaz groups is their purposes, which is reflected in their training. While there is some overlap, the SEALs are primarily deployed on small unit special operations missions in various environments. Given that they're a naval unit, this includes missions that require amphibious warfare, which is fighting in or near bodies of water. However, they also engage in direct raids or assault missions on enemy targets, capturing or killing high-value individuals, and gathering intelligence behind enemy lines, among other tasks like sabotage and demolition. This can occur in not just waterfront locations, but also in jungle, urban, Arctic, mountainous, and desert environments. Meanwhile, the primary purpose of Spetsnaz teams is to directly or indirectly support other parts of the Russian military, either by assisting them in combat missions or conducting special operations. Their training prepares them for covert operations, which often call for close-quarters combat and more unconventional forms of warfare, whereas the various SEAL teams report to a Navy commander who oversees the rotation and operations of the currently active SEAL platoons. Spetsnaz units are subject to a different chain of command structure. Since Spetsnaz is a part of whatever military or intelligence group formed it, they operate under the command of that specific arm of the Russian armed forces. A common misconception about Navy SEALs and Spetsnaz operators is that they're intended to be able to do everything and anything. The same can be said of almost all special forces across the world. Some believe they're expected to be capable of any and all specialized skills, every conceivable combat style, and are masters of utilizing any firearm imaginable. But these soldiers aren't superhuman, nor are they the kind of action heroes you might expect to see in the John Wick movies. Special forces are about specialization, not about being more than human. Both individual SEALs and Spetsnaz will have their own tasks and unique skill sets. Individual team members may be designated as medics, marksmen, or any number of other roles. Working together, though, the team becomes an elite fighting unit. While SEALs are generally trained to have broader capabilities ranging from reconnaissance to direct action and counterterrorism, Spetsnaz units are typically tailored for specific tasks and made up of personnel with that specific training. There are also various Spetsnaz groups specializing in missions on the front lines. Normally, they're tasked with destroying enemy strongholds and utilized in larger numbers as assault infantry. According to interviews with ex-Spetsnaz commandos, one of their tactics is to send a detached force to carry out an initial strike from the flank. These troops will deliver a quick blow, then move out, either on foot or by vehicle. The operational philosophy for Spetsnaz is always the same: get in and then get out as quickly as possible. Inversely, the Navy SEALs aren't a unit designed to partake in frontline combat. That's often reserved for larger conventional forces such as the infantry divisions of the U.S. Army. Special forces like the SEALs shouldn't be anywhere near the front lines during combat. Their role is to conduct operations behind enemy lines. In some cases where such forces exist, they will assist in training local militants to fight against an enemy, occasionally leading them in smaller assaults, but never fighting head-on with the conventional military. The Navy SEALs are highly effective in reconnaissance operations on a battlefield and other methods of preparing infantry for entering that space. Their other typical small unit missions are counterterrorism operations, which consist of actioning strategies to defeat potential terroristic threats. This is another way in which the SEALs and Spetsnaz groups are similar. as they exist to accomplish a lot of the same goals as each other on behalf of their countries. It's more so the specific ways they function that tend to differ, and the specific ways they conduct their operations. Another similarity that's also a difference is how these two forces are armed. Both of them are provided with some of the most impressive and deadly weaponry available to them, but it's their specific choices of arsenal that are different. When it comes to outfitting special forces, their gear is all specially selected depending on the tactics required for an operation. Factors like whether or not a weapon needs to be silent, if an enemy target will be far away or in close quarters, and whether a mission is taking place during the day or night, to name a few. It's no secret that both the Navy SEALs and the Spetsnaz have first pick of some of the best weapons and equipment that the US and Russian military have to offer. Starting with the Spetsnaz groups, it's long been rumored that they've trained with and utilized a piece of equipment known as a ballistic knife, which could fire its blade directly into an enemy's chest. This has since been revealed to be propaganda on the part of the United States, intended to add to the Red Scare and fuel the American public's fear toward Russia. However, that propaganda might have inspired some various Spetsnaz units, as since 1986 some have been issued an NRS-2 survival knife, which can not only cut through wire but can reportedly fire a 7.62mm pistol round up to 25 meters. Other notable Spetsnaz group weapons include the Dragunov sniper rifle and SV-98 bolt-action rifle. Snipers in Spetsnaz units are highly trained and lethal at long distances, many often using modernized SVDS rifles with folding stocks, or the latter bolt-action rifle, which is typically used with a mounted variable magnification scope, giving a range of 1,000 meters. While it can also be fitted with a sound suppressor for stealthier operations, this can severely limit the weapon's mobility. This is why the VSS Vintorez sniper rifle, a silent assault rifle, is a Spetsnaz favorite, especially during missions that require a great deal of stealth. Despite being initially developed in the 80s, this weapon still sees widespread use today among Spetsnaz operators. Additional weapons in the Spetsnaz arsenal are the AS-Val assault carbine, a silent 9mm assault rifle capable of firing subsonic rounds. Yes, that means each bullet travels slower than the speed of sound, making it perfect for silent missions. There's the AK-74, a standard-issue weapon for Russian soldiers used by Spetsnaz and regular troops. This is one of the many modernized versions of the classic AK-47 that exist, and these are typically lighter and more accurate than the original. The other variations found in the hands of Spetsnaz units also include the AK-103, the AK-12, and AK-15 rifles. Navy SEALs have plenty of expensive toys of their own too, given that they have an extremely large military budget, which is also exclusively allocated to their unit. They have access to top-of-the-line gear. Much like the Spetsnaz's own arsenal, the types of weapons used by Navy SEALs will vary depending on the type of mission they're conducting. Among some of the more commonly used in the hands of Navy SEALs is the M4A1 carbine, a shorter version of the M16 assault rifle, capable of semi-automatic and automatic firing. Its numerous Picatinny rails on the receiver and the handguards allow for various scopes, sights, grips, or other attachments, including underbarrel grenade launchers, to be fitted to the M4A1, giving it a great deal of versatility. SEALs are also known to be fond of the MK-17 SCAR-H, chosen to eventually replace a number of existing weapons used by not only them but other United States Special Forces units too. This is because the MK-17 comes in 3 different variations: a standard version with a 16-inch barrel, then a shorter 13-inch and a longer 21-inch. These different barrels are designed in such a way that they can be easily switched out, meaning the MK-17 can be altered to suit a desired role, either as a sniper rifle, an assault rifle, or a close-quarters weapon. Then, of course, it would be remiss of us to not mention the pig. And no, that's not a literal pig the Navy SEALs bring into battle, although one of those feral hogs could probably do some damage. The pig is the nickname given to the M60 machine gun, a weapon first developed following the Second World War that first saw a lot of action in the Vietnam War. The M60 and its various updated versions have long been a favorite light machine gun of the US Navy SEALs, given that it could be accurately fired from the shoulder or mounted to gunner positions on vehicles. The SEALs have long favored the M60 since the Vietnam War, and although its use was phased out in favor of more modern weapons in other branches of the US military, the most updated version, the M60E4, was still suited to the missions the SEALs conduct. Since they're often sent on raids and operations wherein traveling light is essential, and the Navy SEALs are specialists in amphibious warfare, moving from water to land quickly, The M60E4 weighing less than some newer machine guns and operating reliably in salt water meant it saw continued use up to the modern day. Overall, in terms of armaments, the case is pretty much the same for both. Their firearms are subject to change depending on what the objectives and requirements of the particular mission are. Navy SEALs and Spetsnaz operators alike can use a wide array of assault rifles, submachine guns, light machine guns, sniper rifles, and pistols. While both the U.S. Navy SEALs and various Russian Spetsnaz groups are both highly trained units, equipped with a wide range of weapons and skills that enable them to complete their operations, the primary focus and structure of both these Special Forces units are different. The Navy SEALs specialize in a variety of small unit operations, while the different Spetsnaz groups vary in their function depending on which branch of the Russian military organized them. But in terms of which of these groups would be able to take on the other in direct combat, well, it's hard to say with any degree of certainty. Neither one usually engages in pitched battles like regular infantry. Given the specific types of missions SEALs and Spetsnaz are trained for, both possess soldiers in near peak physical condition and a skill level that would make them fairly evenly matched. After all, the United States and Russia spent a staggering amount of their already enormous military budgets to ensure these units receive the highest level of training possible. With the United States, generally speaking, considered to be the wealthier of the two countries, that might give the Navy SEALs a slight advantage in terms of the advanced weapons and the gear their troops would have access to. But given the similarities in skill sets and training received by them and the Russian Spetsnaz operatives, any slight differences in gear would almost be negated. Both have access to weaponry that's among the deadliest currently available. During a direct engagement, having something like an AK-74 or an AK-12 in your hands doesn't make you much more or less effective than someone wielding an M4A1 or an MK-17 SCAR-H. While it's true some firearms have advantages, like better accuracy or more stopping power, in the end, the efficiency and reliability of any weapon all comes down to the skills of the person using it, rather than its technical specifications. So, in a fight between the SEALs and Spetsnaz, that would likely be the determining factor, the skill of the individual soldiers. After all, different Spetsnaz units exist to serve different purposes. Even though they've trained to operate in a number of different environments and varying missions, the SEALs would very likely perform differently against every different Spetsnaz variation. Up against most of the Spetsnaz units formed internally within the Russian army, the Navy SEALs could have the upper hand, given their equipment and training differ from that of standard soldiers. But better equipped Spetsnaz operators like those working under the FSB or the GRU are some of the most ruthless and feared in the world, and they have the training and equipment to back up that reputation. However, given the performance of Russian special forces in Ukraine to date, there is serious questions about their basic competency and effectiveness. While you regularly hear about daring Ukrainian special forces raids, such as the one that destroyed an S-400 battery in Crimea and opened the skies up for devastating missile attacks in Sevastopol, no similar stories of Russian operations are making their way out of the country, even from pro-Russian sources. This likely means that even Russia's best aren't quite meeting the mark. When it comes down to it, there is at least one similarity that both share. Both the U.S. Navy SEALs and the Spetsnaz are special forces comprised of some very dangerous individuals who have been trained to make the world a cleaner place, at least from the perspective of their respective countries. Thanks again to our sponsor, Conflict of Nations, the free online PvP strategy game happening in a modern global warfare. Get a special gift of 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription for free by using the link. It's only available for 30 days, so don't wait. Choose your country and start fighting your way to victory right now. Now watch how Mexico is taking over China's manufacturing, or check out why China will never be a global superpower.